The golden vow and the unburying past. The rooftop glittered with a golden light as violinists played beneath a silk canopy. At the center, Pierce Ashton, the billionaire hotel magnate, with a reputation built on charm and ruthless expansion, raised a champagne glass. His graying hair caught the amber glow of the sunset, and a quiet hush fell over the elite crowd. "To new beginnings," he said, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "and to the kind of love that makes us brave enough to start over." The crowd cheered, glasses clinked, and by his side, Skylar, dazzling in her ivory gown, kissed his cheek. Cameras captured the moment as if history were being written. After all, she had been his wife's best friend, and now she was his future wife. On the surface, it was a fairy tale of second chances, golden vows, and a man who refused to live in the past. But a past that isn't buried can still breathe. Across the street, parked silently on the furthest corner of the Cedarwood estate, a long black limo was idling. Inside, a woman sat motionless. Her name was Victoria. She hadn't moved in 20 minutes. Her eyes were fixed on the rooftop. She could see Pierce raise Skylar's hand for the cameras. She remembered that hand. It used to hold hers in shared grief. "I'll never let anything hurt you," Skylar had promised her. In the back seat, 4 small children stirred in their sleep, in soft matching coats, their faces nestled together. 2 had curled up against each other. The other 2 were lulled by the hum of the engine. Victoria reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Thick, expensive, cream-colored. The wedding invitation had arrived anonymously, a gift or a warning. She traced the embossed names with her finger, Pierce Ashton and Skylar. Pierce had no idea. No idea that the past had parked just outside his spotlight. He laughed on cue. He posed with investors and celebrities. He kissed Skylar again, all perfectly timed for the PR team documenting the romance of the year. And yet, beneath his polished exterior, something stirred. A flicker, a shadow. Victoria's voice whispered in his memory. "The truth doesn't stay buried, Pierce. It just waits." A valet walked past the limo and paused to look inside. Victoria slowly turned her head. The window lowered an inch. "I'm not here yet," she said, her tone like marble. "He'll know when I am." Then she rolled up the window and looked toward the rooftop one last time. The best friend's guilt. The gala was just beginning. Skylar smiled for the cameras, as if she were born to be adored. Her hand clung to Pierce's with practiced ease. Her white gown was a whisper of elegance against the gold-lit skyline. Everything about her screamed perfection, except for the invisible tension knotted beneath her ribs. The night was flawless. She was marrying a millionaire. Yet she couldn't stop thinking about the woman who wasn't there, Victoria. She and Victoria had once shared everything. College nights, heartbreaks, even matching tattoos during a wild summer in Ibiza. Skylar had held Victoria's hand during her wedding to Pierce. She had stood behind her, dressed in lace and tears, when Victoria lost her first child. She had promised to stay close, to protect her. Now she wore the ring Victoria once wore, and the silence between them had stretched for 3 years. "Are you okay?" Pierce asked, leaning in to brush his lips against her temple. His breath smelled faintly of champagne and ambition. "You're tense." "Just cold," she replied with a smile that felt like glass. Pierce nodded and turned to greet another guest. Skylar's gaze drifted past him, toward the shimmering sea below. She could almost feel Victoria's presence in the wind, a ghost she couldn't name aloud. Earlier that day, Skylar had received a letter. No return address, just 3 words in a familiar handwriting. "Did you break me?" It was now folded neatly at the bottom of her clutch, next to her lipstick. She excused herself from the reception and slipped into the suite's dressing room, her heart pounding. Inside, she locked the door and pulled out the note again. No signature, no return address. But she knew. Victoria's handwriting was burned into her memory. She had once written birthday cards, late-night confessions. The vows Skylar had helped Victoria write for her wedding to Pierce. A sudden knock startled her. "Skylar!" Pierce's voice on the other side. She tucked the letter back into her purse. Just a minute. She looked into the mirror. Her reflection looked back with perfectly lined lips and eyes that had seen too much. This was not regret. It was dread. Because if Victoria had written, it meant she wasn't finished. And Skylar knew something else. Victoria never warned twice. She opened the door, returned to the party, and linked arms with Pierce. The cameras resumed their work, but now her smile didn't reach her eyes either. The price of space. Across town, the limo remained silent. Victoria held her phone. On the screen, an unsent message with a simple line. He should see what he left behind. Her thumb hovered over the send button. Not yet. The house was silent. Too silent for the argument that still echoed in Victoria's chest. 3 years ago, they lived in a modern estate outside Napa, California. The vineyards curved around their land like promises. Victoria had thought they were building a life, a family, something rooted. But that morning, Pierce stood on the edge of the nursery under construction, arms crossed, his voice cold. "I can't do this," he had said. Victoria's hands trembled over the tiny onesie she was folding. "What do you mean? We planned this. You said—" "I said a lot of things," he cut in. "But I didn't mean this. I didn't mean now." She stared at him as if he were speaking another language. He looked at her like she was a stranger with expectations he couldn't meet. "I just need space," he added. "Space?" Her voice cracked. "I'm 6 months pregnant, Pierce." He rubbed his jaw, refusing to look at her belly. "You'll be fine. You always are." That phrase shattered her. He left the same day. No slamming doors, no dramatic speeches, just a silent departure, a packed travel bag, and a vague promise to fix things. What Victoria didn't know was that he was already texting someone else. She found out 2 weeks later. A friend sent her a photo. Pierce was at a Coast fundraiser, wine glass in hand, arm around Skylar. Skylar, who had stopped calling her. Skylar, who had ignored her as soon as Victoria started showing. Skylar, who now looked at her husband the way Victoria used to. The betrayal felt surgical, precise, as if it had been planned. But Victoria didn't scream, didn't chase him. She let the silence grow. She gave birth alone. 4 hours of labor, no name next to hers on the hospital forms, no flowers, no calls, just the nurse whispering, "Quadruplets. That's rare. You're strong." Victoria didn't feel strong. She felt buried. Still, she survived. She raised them. One bottle, one midnight cry at a time. She rebuilt a life from pain, memory, and resilience, and as her babies grew, she told them stories. Not of princes and castles, but of truth, of a man who left, and a woman who didn't break. Back in the present, Victoria sat in the limo and looked at the invitation again. Her thumb traced Skylar's name, the one that used to sign her birthday cards. She wasn't here for revenge. She was here for the truth, and to show Pierce what space had become. 4 little breathing truths he could never run from again. The silent arrival. The Stonehaven Hall buzzed with final preparations. Bouquets were double-checked. The string quartet rehearsed beneath the hanging lights, and the wedding planner circulated like a polite tornado. But upstairs, behind a locked door, Skylar was alone in her dressing gown, looking into the mirror. She hadn't slept. Her eyes told a story no concealer could hide. Pierce had left the rehearsal dinner early, claiming an investor call from Tokyo had pulled him away. But she knew better. He was hiding something. Again. This time it wasn't subtle. His hands had trembled slightly while pouring champagne. His laugh had come a half-second too late, and she'd caught him looking at a woman through the ballroom window. A woman he never mentioned. She wore a black veil, sitting in the back of a limo parked outside. Sierra had seen enough to wonder. Now, brushing her hair in silence, she finally opened the envelope she had been too afraid to read the night before. It was still in her clutch, the one she had pretended not to notice at the gala. Inside, a single photo. Victoria, sitting on a park bench, surrounded by 4 children. A message scribbled on the back in delicate handwriting. "Do you still sleep at night?" Skylar's stomach churned. Victoria had never been dramatic. She was surgical with emotion. When she struck, she did so in silence, with precision. A sudden knock startled her. "Skylar!" Pierce's voice on the other side. She tucked the photo under her vanity drawer, composed herself, and opened the door. He was freshly showered, in silk pajamas, barefoot, but his eyes were dark, tired. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Just tired," she replied. A pause. "Are you sure?" Skylar's eyes locked onto his. "Are you?" He didn't answer. She stepped aside, letting him in. They lay down together in silence, back to back, the space between them colder than it should have been. And outside, parked just beyond the estate gates, Victoria watched the lights go out. Her children slept in the back seat, curled up like puzzle pieces. She whispered, "Tomorrow, they will see you." And she meant all of them. The uninvited guests, the morning sun rose slowly over the vineyard estate, bathing Stonehaven Hall with a soft amber light. Birds flew over the cedar roof as guests began to arrive in designer cars and pastel dresses. A string quartet tuned beneath a floral arch. Champagne flowed from a marble fountain, as if everything was exactly as it should be, until the limo appeared. It wasn't flashy, not the kind hired for weddings. Matte black, silent engine, tinted windows. It pulled up slowly to the main door, just as the first round of guests was being ushered inside. The valet hesitated. The driver rolled down the window and handed him a folded note. "Not a guest. Deliver this inside." Inside the limo, Victoria waited in silence. Her children, Finn, Maya, Sam, and Chloe, were now fully awake, blinking up at her, confused by the strange location. "Mommy," the youngest girl, Chloe, whispered, her voice small. Victoria turned, smoothing her daughter's hair. "We'll just wait a little longer, honey. It's almost time." Her voice was steady, but her hands, folded in her lap, trembled slightly. The valet delivered the note to the wedding planner, who read it and paled instantly. She looked toward the towering double doors where Skylar stood, radiant in her gown, ready for her processional. The planner approached cautiously. "Miss Skylar," she whispered. "There's something outside. A car, a woman. She says she's not here to ruin anything, just to be seen." Skylar's heart stopped. She turned slowly. Pierce, adjusting his cufflinks across the room, didn't notice at first, until Skylar's voice cut through to him like a blade. "Victoria is here." His head snapped up. Time stopped. Outside, Victoria stepped out of the limo. She carried no vengeance. She carried dignity. A soft navy blue dress, modest heels, no makeup except a light sheen on her lips. Behind her, the children followed, still groggy, clutching stuffed animals in their hands. They stood together on the stone path just as the chapel bells began to toll. Every head turned. Victoria lifted her chin and began to walk toward the open doors. And inside, Pierce Ashton's empire began to crack under the weight of 4 small shadows he had spent 3 years trying to forget. The chapel showdown. The chapel was frozen. All heads turned as Victoria crossed the threshold, leading the children by the hand. The silence she dragged behind her echoed louder than the organ music. Skylar stood at the altar, her veil raised, her bouquet trembling. Pierce, already pale, didn't move. His jaw tightened. His hands flexed at his sides. A guest whispered, "Is that—" The children looked wide-eyed at the petals on the floor. Finn, the eldest boy, squeezed his mother's hand. Victoria. Skylar met her eyes, not with fury, but with something older, deeper. "I didn't come to stop anything," Victoria said, her voice clear, audible to everyone. "I came so they could see it, so he could see them." Skylar slowly walked down the steps, passing Pierce without looking at him. She stopped inches from Victoria. She looked at the children, Finn, Maya, Sam, and Chloe. 2 boys, 2 girls. The same eyes as Pierce, the same slightly crooked smile. Skylar turned back to Pierce. "Do you know them?" Her voice was sharp, cracking on the last word. Pierce didn't respond. She repeated it louder. "Pierce, do you know your own children?" The smallest girl, Chloe, hid behind Victoria's leg, frightened by the shouting. Victoria knelt and whispered something reassuring. Pierce swallowed. He tried to speak, nothing came out. Skylar's voice dropped to a final, devastating whisper. "You told me you weren't ready for kids?" she asked. "You lied." Pierce finally spoke. "You don't understand." Skylar snapped. "Then make me understand." Victoria rose again. She looked at Skylar, then at Pierce. "I didn't ask for money," she said. "I didn't ask for a scene. I asked for a name. Their name." She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded envelope. "This is the paternity petition. The court date is set." She placed it gently on the first pew, turned to the children, and gestured. "Come on, let's go." They obeyed, silently and immediately. As they left, the air behind them collapsed, a vacuum of dignity that no lie could fill. Skylar looked at Pierce one last time. In that moment, the wedding was over. "Thu Yet Voi, tôi rất vui vì bạn thích diễn biến đó. Tôi sẽ tiếp tục câu chuyện ngay sau cuộc đối đầu kịch tính trong nhà nguyện, tập trung vào hậu quả ngay lập tức đối với Pierce và hành động của Skylar." The aftermath and the unmaking of a magnate. The wedding never officially ended. There was no announcement, no orchestral cue, no explanation. The guests simply filed out, their designer shoes clicking on the marble like slow applause for a spectacular show that had ended in disaster. Skylar had vanished into the bridal suite. Pierce was left alone, sitting on the altar bench, his tie loose, his collar unbuttoned, sweat forming under his impeccable suit. In front of him, the folded paternity petition envelope Victoria had left remained untouched, a small piece of paper acting like a potent poison. Outside, the limo carrying Victoria and the children was already gone. Victoria hadn't wasted time. A quick turn of the key, 4 children buckled up again, and the soft hum of the engine pulling away. No theatrics, no final words. A photographer tried to follow them. Nora, Victoria's old friend, who was secretly present, blocked the gate. "No photos of the children," she said. "You had your drama. Leave the rest." Upstairs, Skylar looked at herself in the gold-framed mirror, mascara streaked beneath her lashes. Her wedding dress now felt like a costume. She remembered trying it on and having a strange premonition. I feel like someone knew. Now she felt like someone had been meticulously played. A soft knock came at the door. "Pierce?" She didn't speak. "I didn't expect her to show up," he said from the hallway. "I didn't expect any of this." Skylar stood up, hands gripping the edge of the vanity. "You didn't expect the truth?" A pause. Pierce's voice returned, laced with desperation. "She said she was unstable, that she left me." "She left you pregnant with 4 children," Skylar countered, her voice dangerously low. The silence lasted longer this time. Pierce finally spoke, his voice hollow. "It wasn't supposed to matter anymore. We were supposed to start clean. Skylar turned towards the door, her voice decisive. There's no such thing as clean, Pierce. Not when you build on rot. She unlocked the door, walked past him without a word, and left Stonehaven Hall, leaving him standing in the deserted hallway. The hotel lobby bar was quiet at noon the next day. Skylar sat alone at a corner table, no makeup, her hair still partially up from the wedding day. An untouched champagne flute sat in front of her. Victoria arrived, 10 minutes late. Not to appear powerful, but because one of the children had a minor accident in the car. She entered without makeup, without an entourage, and without hesitation. Just the quiet fire of a woman who had survived what no one saw. Skylar stood up but didn't smile. Victoria didn't expect her to. They sat down. A long silence passed. Finally, Skylar spoke. Did you know he would never tell me? I didn't come to tell you, Victoria said, her voice measured. I came so he would see them. Skylar looked down at the table. He told me you cheated on him, that he caught you with someone else, that he was heartbroken. Victoria let out a quiet laugh, more breath than voice. He's always the victim in his own stories. Skylar looked up. Why didn't you try to ruin him years ago? You could have done it. Victoria looked her in the eyes. Because I thought maybe he'd seek them out on his own. Someday. She leaned in. Her voice firm. He never did. The weight of that truth landed harder than any lawsuit. Skylar swallowed hard. I thought I stole him from you, she whispered. Victoria tilted her head gently. You didn't. He gave himself away. For a moment they were just two women who had loved the same man and paid for it in different ways. Skylar reached into her purse and pulled out her engagement ring. She slid it across the table. Do me a favor, she said. Victoria looked confused. Give that to your daughter Maya someday, Skylar said. Tell her it was a reminder of what she's worth and what she's not. She needs reminders of you, of what you walked away from and what you stood up to. Victoria said nothing, but for the first time in a long time, her eyes filled with tears. Skylar stood up. She adjusted her coat and looked back once before leaving. I'm sorry he made us think we were enemies, she said. Victoria watched her disappear into the light beyond the door. Not enemies, not anymore, just survivors. The viral truth and the fall of an empire. The news broke at 7:14 a.m. the next morning. Not through a press conference, not a tabloid, but a viral leak. A grainy security video, time-stamped, appeared online. Location: the Bayview Clinic. Date: 3 years ago. The footage was short, less than a minute, but it didn't need to be longer. It showed Pierce Ashton entering the private clinic in a tailored suit and sunglasses. He handed an envelope to the reception nurse. She opened it, wide-eyed, and nodded. Then he turned and walked out. Not once did he look down the hallway behind him, where Victoria had just been wheeled into the delivery room. There was no audio, but the silence in the video said everything, and it spread like wildfire. News anchors scrambled. Social media accounts exploded. Ashton shame trended by noon. Every major news outlet ran the same headline. Billionaire bribed clinic to scrub records of his own quadruplets. Pierce's PR team denied it, calling the footage misleading. But the damage was done. Skylar didn't talk to the press. Her silence became its own devastating statement. Board members of Ashton Hotels called an emergency session. Stock plummeted. Investors pulled out. By midnight, the empire Pierce had taken 15 years to build had begun to crack under the weight of his moral failure. Meanwhile, Victoria sat on her living room floor in her modest rental, folding laundry next to her 4 small children, Finn, Maya, Sam, and Chloe, playing with toy dinosaurs. She didn't turn on the TV, but Nora sat on the sofa, laptop open, watching the media frenzy grow. "You could sue him," Nora said without looking away. "You could own half of his stock next month." "I don't want what he has," Victoria said softly. "I just wanted what he took to come to light." Nora leaned back. "You're the scariest kind of woman, you know." Victoria smiled faintly. "No, I'm just the kind who remembers everything." One of the children, Finn, brought her a drawing. It was crude, childish, scribbled in crayon, but clear. 5 stick figures holding hands. One wore a crown. "Am I that one?" Victoria asked, pointing to the crown. Finn nodded. "You're the queen." In a world where men like Pierce built glass towers, Victoria built her kingdom with crayons and quiet courage. The kind of kingdom no scandal could ever destroy. The final letter and the unbroken line. The black limo pulled away from the courthouse as silently as it had arrived for the paternity hearing. Inside, Victoria sat in the back with her children, all buckled in. There were no tears, no drama, just the soft, heavy silence of a story concluded. This wasn't victory. This was relief. Meanwhile, inside the penthouse office of his flagship hotel, Pierce Ashton watched it all on a muted screen. His corbata was loose, his eyes sunken. He watched the limo disappear from view. He stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the city he once owned. He felt exposed. The letter. It arrived on a Tuesday, no return address, just a single name written in block letters on the back. Finn. The envelope was soft, slightly crumpled, like paper passed through small hands. On the front, Pierce's name was badly misspelled. Pierce. He picked it up and placed it, unopened, on the edge of his desk, choosing avoidance over fear. Hours later, after Pierce had retreated to the terrace with a view of a city that no longer applauded him, Skylar returned to the penthouse for the final move-out. She paused, looking at the desk. She simply opened the envelope. Inside was a folded page, messy with crayons. There were 4 signatures: Finn, Maya, Sam, Chloe. Each name followed by a crooked heart. The message wasn't long. "Dear Mr. Pierce, Mommy says we don't need you, but we drew this so you remember us. Maya can spell butterfly now. Sam runs fast. Finn got a gold star. Goodbye." There was a drawing, too. 5 stick figures, just like the one Finn had drawn earlier. Only this time, one figure stood outside the group. A sad face, a small question mark above its head. Skylar slowly folded the page. She slipped it back into the envelope. She walked to the terrace where Pierce sat. "You were a storm, Pierce," she said, her voice quiet and sharp. "She raised the sunlight." He didn't reply. Skylar walked away, leaving him with the letter. Because some truths are too unbearable to speak aloud, and some love letters are too innocent to be read by the guilty. Epilogue. Roots and light. The letter remained on the desk for days, gathering dust. Long after Skylar had left. Long after the world stopped whispering his name. The penthouse balcony that once glittered under champagne lights was now silent. Pierce had vanished completely. Some whispered of exile, others of slow reinvention. The light in the top-floor window remained dark. Meanwhile, far down the coast, Victoria was in a paint-splattered apron in a sunlit classroom, helping Finn mix colors. She had finally opened her own small architecture and design studio. She had stopped asking about him. Children sometimes do that, not because they forget, but because they make room for what stays. Victoria no longer needed answers. She had laughter in the hallway, crayon hearts on the refrigerator, and the knowledge that she had built a life so full of light and roots that the shadow of the past could no longer reach them. 15 years later, Finn Ashton, 20 South, the eldest, walked through the coastal town. He was a tall young man, with his mother's steady gaze and strong ethical mind. He was now an architecture student, spending his summer break working at his mother's studio, Roots and Light. He stopped near a newsstand. The headline spoke of the final sale of the former Ashton Hotel's headquarters, the massive glass tower in the city being converted into public housing. He looked toward the ocean where Victoria sat sketching, serene and focused. She looked up and smiled. It was a smile of deep, earned peace. "Mom," Finn said, walking up to her. "I need to get back to the studio. That foundation work won't pour itself." Victoria closed her sketchbook, her eyes full of love. "Go on," she said. "Build it strong, Finn. Build it to last." As Finn walked away, ready to build a new world based on honesty, Victoria watched him. Pierce Ashton had thought he was strong by walking away. But his son, Finn Ashton, was stronger. A quiet reminder that true courage isn't found in a towering skyscraper, but in the unwavering decision to stay and build a life worth living. The unbroken line of strength continued. Extended epilogue. The inherited integrity. 5 years after his graduation, Finn Ashton had established himself as a rising star in sustainable architecture. His firm, Roots and Light, had won a competitive bid for a major urban renewal project in San Francisco, converting a massive, old corporate headquarters into ethical, eco-friendly housing. The primary consultant for the project's financial oversight and ethical sourcing was a specialized firm known for its fierce commitment to transparency. Finn walked into the initial partnership meeting. Waiting for him was the lead consultant, a tall, earnest young man with a focused gaze. "Finn Ashton," the consultant said, extending his hand. "I'm Michael Taylor. I've heard great things about your work at Roots and Light." Finn shook his hand, instantly recognizing the name Michael Taylor. Not from the gossip pages, but from industry news. Michael Taylor was the architect who had famously walked away from the Sterling Hotels project after a massive ethical dispute, choosing integrity over a multi-million-dollar fee. Finn admired him greatly. "Michael," Finn replied, "the honor is mine. Your reputation for non-negotiable ethics is exactly why we wanted you on this project." Michael smiled, a slight, knowing curve of his lips. "I learned the hard way that when the foundation is rotten, the whole structure eventually collapses. My former client, Alexander Vance, funded my current firm specifically to ensure that never happens again." Finn's eyes widened. Alexander Vance. The name echoed the other ghost of the past, the powerful figure involved in the unwanted baby scandal that had briefly overlapped with his mother's own story years ago. He realized the profound connection. Michael Taylor's mentor was the repentant man from a parallel scandal. "Mr. Vance," Finn mused. "That's a name I recognize from a different era of business." "Indeed," Michael nodded. "But this project isn't about that era. It's about drawing a new line. We both come from families where the fathers chose empire over integrity. Our mothers, Victoria and Alara, Michael's mother in his own story, taught us the real cost of that choice. We are the generation that builds differently." Finn felt a sense of powerful destiny. He was meeting not just a colleague, but a counterpart, another son who had been forced to reconcile the sins of a wealthy, absent father with the fierce love of a resilient mother. "Then we are aligned, Mr. Taylor," Finn stated, looking at the towering blueprints on the wall. "No shortcuts, no compromises. Let's build a foundation that even the past can't crack." The two young men shook hands again, sealing a partnership built not on inherited wealth, but on inherited integrity. The story of their father's failures had inadvertently brought them together, funding a future where their mother's hard-won lessons would finally define success. The collaboration between Finn Ashton and Michael Taylor proved instantly synergistic. Finn brought the groundbreaking artistic vision of Roots and Light, while Michael provided the rigorous, uncompromising ethical framework honed by Alexander Vance. They were an unstoppable unit, united by a shared, silent history of reckoning. During a review of the budget, a conflict arose. The city council required a last-minute addition of costly, reinforced wiring for the public areas, impacting the projected profit margin significantly. "It cuts our margin by nearly 10%, stated the project manager, concerned. "We can hide the cost in contingency fees or suggest a cheaper, non-reinforced wiring that technically meets the minimum code." Michael leaned forward, his gaze hardening. "The minimum code means nothing if the integrity is compromised. We're building public housing. If there's any risk, we take the hit." The project manager turned to Finn, expecting the lead architect to defend the bottom line. Finn, however, looked at Michael, recognizing the steel in his eyes. The same steel he had often seen in his mother, Victoria, when she fought for their family's honor. "Michael is correct," Finn stated, tapping the budget proposal. "We absorb the cost. The profit margin is secondary to the project's ethical foundation. We don't hide fees, and we don't use minimum code when the safety of the end users is at stake. The moment we compromise here, we become the men our fathers were." Michael nodded slowly, a flicker of appreciation in his eyes. "That's why I wanted roots and light, Finn. You understand that integrity is the highest currency," the project manager conceded, slightly awed by the swift, unified ethical front. Later, as they reviewed the updated budget privately, Finn looked at Michael. "It takes courage to walk away from 10% of profit. I learned that from my mother, who taught me the value of walking away clean." Michael smiled, resting his hand on the blueprint. "And I learned the exact cost of trying to buy that integrity back. Alexander Vance often reminds me, the foundation must be stronger than the temptation. We carry the weight of our mother's sacrifices, Finn. We have to succeed where our fathers failed." The two young men realized their partnership was more than just business. It was a bond forged in fire, a silent vow to rewrite the narrative of their powerful, complicated legacy. "Tu yet voi." Tôi sẽ viết một đoạn tiếp theo, tập trung vào việc Finn và Michael phát triển sự tôn trọng lẫn nhau trong công việc và đối diện với một thử thách kinh doanh nhỏ, củng cố triết lý đạo đức mà mẹ họ đã truyền lại. Chapter next. Integrity is a debt that cannot be deferred. The professional relationship between Finn Ashton and Michael Taylor deepened with every challenge. Their work wasn't just about constructing buildings. It was about building a legacy of honor. They found themselves trusting each other implicitly, their conversations often cutting straight to the moral core of a decision, bypassing the usual corporate maneuvering. One afternoon, Michael flew out to inspect a fabrication plant in Oregon. He discovered that a batch of custom-made, ethically sourced recycled timber, crucial for the building's interior, was delayed due to a quality control issue at the supplier. The supplier offered a swift, quiet solution. Replace the delayed batch with cheaper, non-certified timber from a less scrutinized source, promising to refund the cost difference and keep the project on schedule. Michael immediately called Finn. "We have a problem," Michael said, his voice tight. "The supplier is offering a substitution. It's aesthetically identical, and we can make the deadline, but the wood is not certified ethical. It would compromise the core promise of the whole project." Finn listened, taking in the gravity of the situation. Missing the deadline would incur huge penalties and damage Roots and Light's reputation, which was built on timely delivery. "What's the cost of waiting, Michael?" Finn asked. 2 weeks delay at least. Significant penalties, and a potential public relations nightmare. The old Pierce Ashton playbook would be to take the cheaper wood and bury the certification papers. A heavy silence hung between the two young men. They both knew the temptation of the easy lie, the path their fathers had always chosen. "We don't do that," Finn stated, his voice firm, echoing the clarity of his mother, Victoria. "We wait. We absorb the penalties. Our reputation isn't built on meeting a deadline. It's built on keeping our word." Call the supplier back, Michael. Tell them we will take the 2-week delay and the certified wood only. And tell them if they ever offer a substitution like that again, we pull their contract entirely." Michael let out a slow breath of relief. "Understood. The foundation stays clean." "Always," Finn confirmed. "Because this isn't just about wood, Michael. This is about proving to the world, and to ourselves, that our mother's integrity is a debt that cannot be deferred." Hanging up, Michael looked at the phone. He felt a profound sense of respect for Finn. He realized that the greatest inheritance they both received wasn't their father's money, but the unwavering courage to be honest, a quality that was, indeed priceless.